So my name is Renee Lee. That is my real name. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on FetLife under the great letter R with a couple of underscores. I like to keep things simple. I am very out there about my lifestyle. My work knows about it. I talk about it. We left the motel in Canberra, and I was doing the desk thing. And the lady says, she says, so what you doing? You on holidays? I said, well, kinda. Kind of a working holiday. But it's a fun working holiday. I get to meet lots of cool people. And she goes, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm going on a roadshow. And she says, oh, what about? I said, oh, Australian BDSM Archives. And she goes, oh, well, that sounds interesting. I said, yeah, we're getting people's history and stuff like that. She said, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, yeah, it is really cool. And most of the people I talk to say that. And most of the vanilla people I talk to say that. We've had really actually positive responses from vanilla people. So that's the first boring bit is about me. Second boring bit about me is I'm the managing director of an organization called KNOTbound. Started the organization a year and a half ago to provide services to the community. It's a nonprofit organization. And it's doing a lot of things, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, because that's not where I want to go right now. When we started we announced the archive some months ago, to be honest. Nobody paid much attention. Didn't surprise me. So as we started to get some people interested, I said we need to go on the road and we need to talk to the communities about what this is about. And we got a lot of stuff we have to do to make this real. And some people out there said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing all this stuff? I thought, well, that's a good question. Why am I doing this? And I thought about it. And I'm going to tell you the answer. It's going to take me a little bit. First thing I'm going to talk about a little bit is vision. Visions are things anybody can have. You can have a vision. You can have a vision. Neighbor can have a vision. I can have a vision. All of us can have vision. But a vision without action is just an idea. You got to do something to make it live and breathe. You don't have to be special to have a vision. And you don't have to be special to make that vision come to life either. Ordinary people have visions. So I'm not going to talk about people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi and, all those really, really big people that we all know about their vision and they changed the world and that's cool. I'm going to talk about someone a little closer to home, had a little more impact on all of us. I'm going to talk about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, the CEO of Apple Computer, who created Apple Computer. And not long ago, he died. And as he was dying, I'm thinking, here's this guy who's poured all of his time into being the CEO of this big company, making all these products, making lots of money. Surely now that he's dying, he's going to realign his priorities. He's going to do things that are important. He's going to spend time with his friends and his family. And he didn't do that. And you see pictures of him on stage at work talking to his staff, and he's got like a drip bag, That's how sick he is. He can barely walk. And he's at work. And I'm going, man, this guy needs to get a grip. He doesn't know what's important in life, right? And I'm going, how's this guy going to figure out what's important? So I didn't think much of him. I actually kind of thought badly of him. I thought, making money is not so important, right? And then I was doing a class on vision. And I was looking up visions. And I ran across Steve Jobs' vision. And I had never known it. And it changed the way I saw him. See, Steve Jobs didn't create Apple to make a lot of money. He didn't create it to make great computers. Steve Jobs came up with his vision at a time when the internet was in its infant stages and computers were giant, great big things that places like IBM had and NASA had and cost millions of dollars. And he saw the potential of these things for you. And he said, I want to put a computer on everybody's desk. I want a computer in everyone's home because I want everyone to have this power. The power of knowledge, the power of information, the power of connection. that computers will give us. And he spent the rest of his life living out that vision, creating Apple Computer, creating this little thing on my wrist, because this little thing on my wrist connects me to all of you. And that was what was important to Steve Jobs. And that's a hell of a vision. And because he lived that vision out, he changed the world. He changed all of our lives. How many people here, found BDSM on the internet through a computer? How many people use a computer to stay connected to their local community? Right. So he changed the lives of every one of you and me. And I'm here today probably because of him. And I understood why, as he was dying, he was at work. Because this is big. This is really big. This is bigger than him and bigger than his family and bigger than his staff. This is huge, right? And I'm pretty sure he would have thought of all the things he hadn't done, all the things he hadn't finished. And he was never going to have time to finish. And so he poured the rest of his life into his vision. The Archives project is run on vision. And that vision is very close to what Steve Jobs had. It's about information. It's about knowledge. It's about connections. It's about people. We want to collect and capture and preserve our subculture, our history, our artifacts, our connections, our lifestyle, to share, not just from person to person today, but to people across all the generations that are to come. We want to spread that around. And the Archives Project is one of the ways that we want to do that. The only one. We have some other things that we're doing. Because I think for a long time we've had a vision that's destructive to individuals and community. And that vision has been that we should be hidden. We should be unacknowledged. And that when our time on this planet is done, we should disappear quietly, without fuss, from a world that doesn't embrace us and doesn't want us. That vision was important for a while. That idea kept us safe in a time when we weren't safe to be different. There's been a lot of changes in the world, and I'm not saying that everything about that has changed. It hasn't, but that's part of why we're here. But a lot of things have changed, like that woman behind the counter, or the enterprise architect at work who shook my hand and said, "I think you're doing something amazing." Okay? And I don't think that we need that vision anymore. The Archive Project, the BDSM Archive Project, runs on a different vision. It's a vision that says we deserve to be remembered. We deserve to be remembered. We deserve to have all the power and the passion and the love and the blood and the sweat and the tears that we have put into our lifestyle preserved and understood and shared with others. That we have brought things that are of value into the world. You go on the web now and you hear about consent, right? Consent is a big thing. Wow, everybody's talking about consent. Well, I learned about consent 20 years ago when I came into BDSM. I didn't hear about it in my vanilla world. I didn't hear about it when I went out on dates. I can tell you that right now. You took your chances, But I heard about safe words and safe calls and consent and a healthier way to engage with people. And I learned about it through BDSM. We gave that out to the world, out to the community, when we began to be exposed to the world. And I think we should own that. It's ours. We should be acknowledged for that. And all the other things that we have brought into the world and continue to bring into the world and into people's lives, we should own that. We should be known for that. These things are important. Because I believe we are important. I think we have brought a lot into the world, and I think that we deserve this. And that's important to me. Because some of you, when you heard me talking about how the world has changed, some of you will be thinking, that's not true for me. you know what? You're right. It's not true for you. Our vision, not bound, is to be bold and to be beautiful and to be unafraid in the world, and some of you can't do that. But I want you. I want you to be able to do that. That's my vision. That you can do that. That you no longer have to be afraid of who you talk to or what you say about how you live. We need to remember our commonality, which we share. We also need to remember our differences and the fact that we celebrate those differences and that those differences do not divide us. Our commonalities and our differences together under BDSM create a unity of community that we sometimes forget. I want to show you what that unity looks like.
Complaints. Everyone just was having the time of their life. And it was, I remember a fascinating night. We had a number of celebrities. I think Ross Wilson from Daddy Cool came down to Hellfire one night, and he came a couple of times. And I remember saying to him, like the 60s, because he was obviously around in the 60s. I think he was at Woodstock, and I go, it must have been incredible to live in the 60s, and it must have been so wild. He says, listen, mate, he goes, look, it was. The 60s was definitely wild. But he says, this right here, this Hellfire Club, this is the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life. So he says, don't worry about the 60s. This here is the wildest thing I've ever seen. And I don't think there's been anything wilder since. So I sort of felt quite proud then. Maybe we were running something that was, essentially I became interested in, as I said, in philosophy and Nietzsche's idea of Dionysus, which is like a kind of, the god of revelry, the god of wine. And, there was a period there, I think, from around 92 to around 98. Hellfire was an incredible Dionysian experiment where, the libidos of an entire generation kind of exploded. And it was a tremendous force of freedom and liberation. And I think a lot of people who came to the club, we had a lot of other celebrities, people like Richard Lowenstein, the filmmaker, Sam Sadevka. These are all friends of Ollie Olsen, who all worked on that film Dogs in Space with him. They all loved Hellfire, and I think they understood what I was trying to do with it, and it became a real thing, and I'm kind of proud of it. So.
And I was told fairly simply that don't get stressed, sit and watch and learn. That's it. And I would say probably for the first 6 months, I periodically went to parties and I sat and I watched and I learned. And it was only after about 6 months that I picked up my first flogger, because I didn't know floggers existed before then. I have to say that when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about BDSM. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know the term existed. I didn't know anything like that. I didn't know that there were actually groups of people that were dedicated to this form of entertainment. And I did my first flogging. Well, I've seen disastrous floggings in my time, but nothing at all beat that one. I think I committed every flogging crime in the book. In particular, I found out that rap is a really cool thing. And in fact, this lady who I flogged, if it wasn't for the fact that she got off on rap and bruising, I would have been even more devastated than I was. And at that point, I dedicated myself to learning how to flog properly. I saw the consequences of my educated but unpracticed attempts. And while she was extremely happy with the flogging, I was devastated because I didn't like unintentional consequences. Very little of what we talked about, in many cases, certainly in the early stages in Adelaide, was DS. It was mostly SM play. And we were cool with that because we didn't, most of us were still feeling our way and learning by experience, learning by doing. And we all looked after each other. And that was the important thing. We didn't have a lot of formal rules. I think some of the rules we've got now, and certainly the rules that I use when I host a party, have arisen out of that, have arisen out of the mistakes we made, and are actually an attempt to ensure that other people don't make the same mistakes. They might not always understand the reason for the rules, because I haven't got the time to sit down and explain to them, but they're rules that have arisen from mistakes I've either made or mistakes I've observed.
In 1998, I moved to Melbourne, and I engaged with the local community here. It was pretty small. I knew most of the people, and I was invited into homes, into discussion groups, into clubs, into private parties, and that's when my journey really began. It was all very scary. I was married, and for a while my husband came into it with me, but it really wasn't his thing. He was okay with me pursuing it, and I did. I engaged with other people. I entered into a formal contracted arrangement with a dominant. I went to the clubs by myself and basically continued to explore. He and I were married for 6 years, and at the end of that, when I realized I needed to move on, I promised myself that I would never again get involved with someone who wasn't in the lifestyle and that I couldn't fully engage with. And that's what I did. I found someone about 8 months later, and 8 months after that we moved in together. And I started a 7-year master-slave relationship. A lot of things happened during that time. I had a lot of personal growth. It was pretty exciting at times. And there were times that weren't so good. And I learned from those as well. And I don't regret any day of my 20 years in the lifestyle.
50 years old. I don't know what to say. I'm unfulfilled in my life and was looking for structure and people to help me navigate a very new life. And BDSM seemed to fit. Favorite thing? Oh, shedding a morality that doesn't really fit my ethics. Being able to a freedom that vanilla life hadn't given me, a way to express myself differently, and to expose myself literally was a huge thing. And for me, it was like the best feeling in the world. Here's me, here I am. If you don't like it, look away.
My earliest memories of anything remotely like BDSM was probably when I was about 14. I grew up in an era where Playboy magazines are left in the toilets by the guys all the time, so nude bodies and sexual discussions were really not that foreign to me. It was just sort of part of growing up. You didn't really pay much attention to it. But when I was 14, we had a cousin stay at my house, my mother's house, and I don't know why. I really don't know why, but I was going through his drawers one day when he was out. I really don't know why. Probably just sheer curiosity. And I found these audio tapes, and I played them. And they were full of really strange and interesting things. They had a lot of scenes in them with schoolgirls and mistresses and spankings and different types of corporal punishment and discipline. That was probably my first introduction to the idea of BDSM, but I never heard it called that. I never talked to anybody about it, but I really, really found those tapes interesting.
An interest in S&M. So, it's one of those things that, everybody who has an interest in S&M, first of all, you think you're the only person on the planet who has this interest. And I remember, I guess, when did your sexuality begin to bud? I don't know, when you're around 12 or something, 12, 13, since you hit puberty. I mean, you sort of have a vague interest in this kind of thing before, but then when your sex drive really kicks in with puberty, you really become interested in it. And then I remember coming across the comics of John Willie, which are vague S&M images. I think I was at Minotaur, and there was a book, and it was only available to people over 18. So I had to shoplift it to get it. But luckily then security wasn't so bad, and it was like an S&M comic, and they wouldn't sell it to you unless you were 18. And obviously I was 13 or 12, or God knows what I was. But anyway, somehow I managed to shoplift this item, and it became like the holy grail of my evening revelries. And I just obviously knew I was into S&M, I think, at that stage. And, I had to also hide this thing around the house, you know what I mean, so that my mother wouldn't find it, which was, I think she did eventually find it and go, what the hell is this? And then so I remember burning it. I remember burning this book because I was so embarrassed and ashamed about it. So I was like, I must have been 12 or 13 or something. So, this is just typical, I think early experiences for most people.
Kinky with a boyfriend. And that wasn't enough. He didn't like pain, inflicting pain on me, and I am a masochist. And eventually I went online and found FetLife. And through that, the VNN, I came to an educational workshop run by R, and it seemed to fit with what I was looking for.
My name, or I'm known as Inquisitor. I've been in the Adelaide scene pretty much since there was an Adelaide scene. I was introduced to the Adelaide scene by another Kingster who I ran into entirely in a non-scene, how would I put it, a non-scene event. We were actually online gaming together, and we had, I was working at a stall at a medieval fair, and I'd let her know that I was going to be there, and she came up and introduced herself. Oh, I'm the person you've been playing with. Yada, 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 and we got talking and felt comfortable enough talking, and then she mentioned, I can't really remember how it got started, but we started talking about sexual alternatives, or somehow got talking about sex. And I mean, I can't imagine how people ever talk about sex. And what happened was, next thing I found, I was invited to a dinner at her place, where she said, oh, there'll be some interesting people there that I'm sure you will get on with. And I said, oh, all right. So I turned up, and my goodness, there was some interesting people there, and I suddenly found I wasn't the only person on earth who had certain inclinations. I thought that was fantastic.
Sir B was a tremendous personage in our local Melbourne scene, and in many places around Australia he was also known. But in Melbourne he was iconic. I think when people think about Sir B, one of the first things they think about is how he dressed, because he was always different. Sir B always wore a black suit,
a formal white shirt and a bow tie. That was his look. And back then, he was the only person who wore a suit in our scene. Pretty much everybody else was doing fetish wear. Sir B helped with many organizations and many events and functions. He was well known for his work with Whiplash, where he and Mistress Magic would stand up and they would do a little prep talk every day, or every time that Whiplash was on. And they would talk about some specific aspect of our lifestyle. So they might talk about how to do a caning, or they might talk about using safe words. So they'd always do a little bit of an instruction, and then we would all go off to play, and Sir B would be right there helping everyone out, helping someone new figure out how to do a spanking, or helping someone be a little bit more comfortable with what they were doing. Sir B had a huge influence on a lot of people. He inspired people. He greeted people. He was like the community greeter. So many new people were greeted first by Sir B, and he would welcome them in, and he would be warm, and he'd be accepting and caring. And hundreds of people passed through this man's ambience. We lost him too soon. Sir B had a medical condition that had a serious side effect that wasn't caught in time. And so we lost him at a relatively young age. This left a huge hole in our community, and I think sometimes that we've been seeking to fill it ever since. Sir B loved our community. He loved our lifestyle, and he loved all the people in it. And his bent was always to care for the community. Everything Sir B did, he did from his heart. Everything he did from generosity. He never did it for himself. He never did it to make himself important or to make himself a leader. He did it because he genuinely loved the BDSM lifestyle and all of the people in it. And because of that, his legacy will never really die.
That's a bit of the people that have so far given to the project. We have some other interviews, and we have some things that are on their way, but it gives you some kind of idea of what people are sharing. Now, each of these people have released these videos to the archives. We do fully own the footage, and that's so that we can care for it properly. We can restrict access as needed. Special conditions can be put on. We've just collected one interview, in fact, where the condition is not to be released till after that person's death. That's fine. It's not a problem. We're not in a hurry to release information. That's not the purpose of an archive. So all of these people have chosen to share bits of their story with you, and we're very thankful for that. To have such history put in our care is a tremendous responsibility, and we take it very seriously. So the next part of this presentation is about what we're doing to take care of the archives and to make sure that we live up to the responsibility of the community. First thing I'll say is that KNOTbound is a company. It's not an association, and it will never be an association. At the moment, it's a sole proprietor company to make sure that the assets are protected while we work towards incorporation with the board. That incorporation will be company limited by guarantee, which is the strongest nonprofit organization that you can do in Australia, which I didn't mention. We're a nonprofit organization. Even as a sole trader, we are a nonprofit organization. We have to work to the legality of that. Once we've incorporated as a company under guarantee, no one can ever profit from the organization. I mean, I can't now anyway, but no one will. Even if we dissipate or dissolve, we must pass all our assets on to another organization of a similar bent. That's the way the laws work. So we are truly here to do what we say we do, and not to make a big pile of money or name for ourselves. We call this a Unity project. A Unity project is a project KNOTbound runs that is about everyone. It's nationwide. Not all of our projects are Unity projects. We run a free library in Melbourne, and we do run some classes. We sponsor a Dom social group, which is self-funding. We do local initiatives in the communities as well. But a Unity project is about everybody across Australia. This is our Unity symbol. Unless we have little t-shirts and a flag, and yep, we're promoting it, you bet. I want to explain it though, because it's very simple, very direct. The white background is white for a reason. BDSM can never be encapsulated in the story of a single person. It's huge, it's wide, it's diverse. It takes all of us together to truly tell the story. All colors together are white, and that's why we have a white background. We don't separate out or distinguish any particular bent from any other. We are here for everyone. The BDSM emblem, which was started in the US by a gentleman, everybody around the world who's in BDSM knows. The holes, the Triskelion, etc. We have turned it green and gold for Australia. These are Australian Unity projects. While history in other places is wonderful and interesting, we want to work on the Australian communities. We want to unify the Australian communities on these projects. So that every time we run a Unity project, you will see this symbol. If we're there, we'll have a little flag, and we'll probably even wear little t-shirts. But anyway, that's what that means, and I'm hoping that we'll see a lot more of that symbol popping up. We have the same rules around it as they do the original emblem project. If you want to use it for free on things, you're welcome. We're happy with that. If you want to sell something, you need to contact us. It is copyrighted. And what we'll probably do is say, that's fine, but put some proceeds into the projects. Because we do have to make revenue, people. And I'll show you why we need to make revenue. Our current focus on the archive project, because we're still at ground zero in a sense, legal research and documentation preparation. There's an awful lot of documents we have to have. We have to have legal release forms. We have to have confidentiality agreements for archivists. We have to have a charter for the organization. Lots and lots of stuff. But most importantly, we need to understand both what the laws are around privacy of this particular type of information, and what our legal standing is about some of the personal information we gather that may not actually belong to the person who's given it to us, and things like that. So we have a huge focus on understanding that, and then we will embed it in our known framework of we need to protect our people. Okay, so it may be legal to release something, but if we think it's going to be a danger, we will wait, and we will not release that at that time. Education for our archivists. We have currently a team of 6 people, very proud of that, 6 people working on this project at various levels around the archives themselves. On this road trip, we have gathered 2 new people. They're oral historians. They work on other projects. They're working on one for the UK right now, and they've worked with the National Library. And they'll be educating our oral history collectors. One of them is also a transcriptionist, which is hugely, hugely valuable to us because I'm not sending this stuff out to any commercial transcriptionists, which might get a hell of a shock if nothing else. But for privacy reasons, we wouldn't do that, so we need internal transcriptionists. We have a library technician, a researcher, and a couple of ladies who are learning the trade. So we need to make sure the education of all our people is top-notch. We will be passing them, we're putting them through educational courses. We're constantly looking at best practices, etc. Physical setup. This is a huge focus of us right now. It takes a lot of equipment and things to manage an archive. That's all back of house stuff. Front of house stuff is what are we collecting? You can imagine it's a ginormous task to collect information across all of Australia. I mean, I could spend my whole life on Victoria and probably never cover it by myself. Okay, so we're focusing first on high profile histories. One of the reasons for that is that the people with the most stories to tell are our oldest people, and many of them are ill or just flat out getting old, and we're in danger of losing those histories. So we're getting out to those people first to make sure that they have a chance to tell their story. BDSM clubs, that's research stuff. So that's sort of a second stream that can run independently. I don't know about you guys, but I got a list of clubs as long as my arm for Melbourne, most of which I've been through, which is kind of scary. And getting that history, which starts to fade after a while, dates, when did they open, where was their location, that kind of thing. Trying to capture that. I was working in a building across from where a club had been one time. And I kept thinking, every time I walked by, I thought, I should take a picture of that. But I wasn't doing this project then. Sure enough, they've now torn it down. And I'm going, I should have taken a picture of that. Oral and video history collection. You've seen some of that. It's awesome. It's just the most impactful stuff. And that stuff anybody can do. They can send to us. They can do it on their own. We're happy to receive that. A young woman said to me, can I do one and send it to you now and then put more in later? And we said, well, yeah. So much easier to remember when you're doing it than 20 years down the road. It'd be great. You can always add to your file. No problem. So that's our current focus for our workers. Now, we have to store this stuff. As you can see, there's a lot of different artifacts back there. We also have digital artifacts. So for a physical repository, we need to get a compactus. We need archive boxes, sleeves, folders, document paper, and all kinds of other stuff. And it all has to be specialist stuff. You can't go to the office work store and get this stuff. So my archivists are currently compiling a list of items that we need. Compactus costs anywhere from $900 to $1,500. Okay, so we're going to be doing some fundraising. Absolutely, we're going to ask people to help so that we can put these things into proper storage. We have to have a digital storage system, and this could be our biggest risk, and therefore we will have an offline only system. It will not touch at this point any type of wireless connection or internet connection, because it's the only way we can keep it 100% secure. I have a team of 5 IT people, about to add a 6th, 2 of which are infrastructure specialists, and one of which is my national manager for IT, who's from South Australia. And they are designing this system as we speak. In fact, we've got a meeting we might be able to make on Skype tonight at 7:30? 7:30 to talk again about our IT initiative. So those guys are designing it. My IT manager has 17 years in the field of IT. He knows what he's doing. My secondary guy, he's got 40. So I have a lot of confidence in these people. We have to have backup. We have to have primary storage. We have to have procedures about how to process all this stuff. All of this is being built even as we're on this roadshow. And we're looking at archival software because, of course, somebody's done it before, right? So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to find out what best practice is, and we're trying to build up to that. Artifact storage. And those things back there, every single one of them takes some kind of specialist care, right? What you're seeing there is not their permanent storage homes. They're just some traveling cases. So when we come to artifacts, we have to understand all the special storage conditions, and our archivists need to be trained up to preserve artifacts. We expect at some point we may have large artifacts. We may have small artifacts. We have medium artifacts. All of these things must be preserved and protected. Archival equipment. I love the community. And because I love the community, I want the best for the community. So we are out there buying expensive equipment so that we can capture and maintain these histories. We have video camera. We have a top-notch recorder. We have a wireless microphone. Yeah, not this thing. Got another one for those oral histories and those people talking into that. We were using that equipment. We've got printers to print out things, all of that kind of stuff, and we will continue to add to that collection. As you can guess, it's expensive. The current location of the archives is in a private home. There is a dedicated storage room. It will be temperature and humidity controlled. It will be pest and rodent controlled. and it is locked and secured. So that's where it stands now. Of course, as we grow, we expect to move it into other locations. The biggest problem is the temperature and humidity controls. You can't find that everywhere. This we can build for now, but we will grow out of it, and we will have to move. While we say the archives is for everyone, and it is, understand everything is not accessible to everyone. It's like going to the museum. You don't get to go to the back preservation rooms or the stuff that's stored in the storerooms or things like that. There are always things that are locked away that the general public doesn't get access to. What the general public can have access to is redacted transcripts, things where certain information has been stripped out. So we need to make sure that wherever the archives are, we have secured areas, and that we are allowing people access only to the level that they should have access to. It's a primary concern of ours. What are we looking for in the future? Why are we doing this? Where are we going? Well, to be honest, we have some pretty big plans. We expect to have a world-class archive. We expect to do traveling exhibitions with the artifacts around Australia. And we want to build a museum one day. Yep, we're pretty ambitious. Where are all those artifacts going to live? Well, one day we'd like to show the world a bit of who we are. And we think we can do that. It'll be a permanent educational resource. People say, what was it like? The archives will tell them. And it will be a memorial to our people and our culture that we hope will last forever. Oh, I know what just happened. No, I don't. There it is. The road trip. So, to help people understand this, because seriously, I said, we want to go on a road show, and we want to go on a road trip, and we want to tell everybody about the archive project. And they said, right, but what are you doing? I said, well, we're building an archive, and we're collecting stuff, and we want to tell everybody. Yeah, but what are you doing? So the term roadshow, while it's very common in my industry, obviously is not that well known to a lot of people. And it basically means you run around and you tell people stuff. And it dawned on me that nobody, in at least as long as I can remember, in BDSM has ever done a roadshow. Right? So we are. And we are going everywhere we can go. So we started in Melbourne. MAST hosted us on the 26th of July. We went to Adelaide on the 30th, Canberra on the 27th of August, Sydney on the 28th of August, Newcastle on the 30th of August, and we did some stuff in the Gold Coast, and in Brisbane we are here. We're working on Albury Wodonga. Didn't quite get that one off on this trip, but we're not far from them, so that's okay. We're probably going to be in Perth in October, and I have still to set up with Darwin and Tasmania. So we really are trying to cover all of Australia. Well, okay, somebody's going to call me on that and say, I got someone who always says, but what about Alice Springs? Well, yeah. Well, when they ask. So we do go where we're asked. I mean, and we have some more minor communities that we're talking with. And if any community wants us to come out, we'll try our best, because we really want people to understand what it is we're doing. Okay, so that's the BDSM Archive project, but who the heck is KNOTbound? That's a good question. Somebody has to own this thing, right? You can't just leave it in a bunch of individuals that may or may not continue with it. The idea is it's not mine. It's going to belong, as I said, to a corporation so that it can live forever. KNOTbound is the name of that organization at this point in time. It is a service organization to the community, and this is only one of the things that we're doing. We're definitely outside the square, people. We're not running munches. We're not running play clubs. We do a few classes and things that other people don't do. But we are individuals, and we do private play parties, but not under this logo. You know, that's our own thing, okay? We are here to serve the community, and that is all we are here to do. We're diverse, we're adaptable, and we are neutral. We do not do politics, because it's not run around any one person. any one person's orientation or friendship group or anything like that. We don't need to do politics. In fact, they're absolutely not allowed. We serve everyone. We're adaptable because we can move into communities and do more, or we can move out of communities if they don't need us. We expect to be a core organization in Australia that everyone can use as a resource, but we have our own initiatives, which means we do not need to leverage off the local community initiatives to keep ourselves going, okay? We are here to help, not to undermine anyone. We're not going to take over anybody's spot or anybody's turf or anything like that. We're not interested in that. Most of our initiatives are far, far bigger than any local community could get off the ground. We are built first and foremost of our 4 basic principles on altruism. We are here to give to others. If anyone wants to come in and power broker off of us, they won't last long because we're not interested in that. I don't care to make a big name for myself. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to inform you. Supporting that, we have ethics. We have quality control, and we have commitment. Those are our 4 building blocks. Everything goes through quality control. Everything must be something we can commit to with passion. If we're not passionate about it, we don't do it. So every initiative that we take on, we run them past these 4 parameters. If they fail, we're not going to do it. And that is what KNOTbound is sort of in the short. Okay, that's our logo, been around for a long time. That's our website. You can go there, you can learn more about us. Basically, we have 4 lines of work that we do. Education, cultural preservation, support services, and social protection. I'm happy to talk outside of this presentation about any of those. Social protection is some of that stuff like working with the Windham City Council, talking to the police and social services, things like that. Support services, we do rural outreach. We've done a couple of workshops out in rural areas. We hope to have a traveling library, traveling workshops, hosting networks, things that support people out in far areas. We're talking to some people about that. And education, as I've touched briefly on. Today, of course, we're talking about cultural preservation. How can you help? Volunteer. We have room for just about everybody. Right now, we have on our board, we have a governance expert. On our national committee, we have a researcher and an IT infrastructure expert. We have a grant writer in New South Wales. We have a writer in Newcastle. We have our oral historians are from ACT. And we have a bunch of volunteers that do small things like cover library books, run errands, whatever in Victoria as well. So what we're doing is we're reaching beyond your BDSM skills and we're asking for your life skills. That's what we need, which is really, really new. So last thing I'm going to do is share another little clip with you. Some last words people have.
Educate yourself as much as possible. Find the things that you do like and look for dominants and tops that are able to give that to you rather than learn with you, because we don't know what we don't know. And so having someone who actually knows what they're doing is probably much safer and far more practical.
There's so many rules and bullshit things, and like, you know, be open about sexuality, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Obviously, you know, I learnt that the hard way. You know, growing up, I mean, I was ashamed of it myself, but then even if you are ashamed of it a little, there's sort of a certain pleasure in that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, they're having a bit of shame or whatever. And don't be so politically correct, you know, just like, be easygoing, have fun with it. You know, I mean, it's fine to have a fantasy of domination and submission, and this is great, and I think it's healthy, but this should never be your life. Some people live it 24/7, and I think some people like that are a little bit crazy, you know what I mean? Just call it. I mean, you know, it's always just a fantasy, it's always just an outlet for a certain kind of sexuality, and I think that's a positive thing, but, you know, always, you know, have a bit of a sense of humor about it, and, you know, be fun-loving and enjoy it.
The important thing is to know yourself. Don't rush. Oh my God, how many people I see. Someone will appear on the scene and within 10 hours they're collared by somebody. Oh my goodness. Consider a collaring like a marriage. If you wouldn't marry the person, don't collar them. And you wouldn't marry them after 10 hours of knowing them or 10 hours of interaction online. It's going to be a disaster. So principle one, if you wouldn't marry them, don't collar them.
Isn't what it looks like on the surface. It's so much deeper, and there is so much more to this than you can imagine. So don't think in a year or two you've touched everything. All that play you see in the clubs, that's just the surface of what BDSM is. Because BDSM, when it's truly embraced, is transformational. I have seen people completely change, completely transform in their lives because they engaged in BDSM. And for the most part, I think that that change has been positive. So get out there and engage, and don't be afraid, because change is a good thing.
You know, people are still people regardless of how they label themselves. And they will act as people.
And that's our presentation. So I want to thank everyone for coming and listening to us and being here. And we'll have a question and answer time. So if anyone has any questions,